Now, I've told you before that the whole point of life is to, well, one way to think about what life is all about is that life is a love simulator. I've told you that in my episodes about love. And another way to frame that is that life is about learning how not to fear. These are just the inverse of each other. Fear and love are inverse. So to say that life is a love simulator, what that means is that life is going to present you with fear over and over and over again so that you can learn how to love it and therefore transcend it. See? And life is such a big thing that it presents you with some very scary things to love, which is precisely what grows your love. How is fear overcome, you might wonder? Ultimately through consciousness. That's the key. Not by necessarily avoiding the fear, but by realizing that the fear is an illusion. That's the key to a permanent root solution to fear. Most of the times when people solve fear in their life, they don't do it through consciousness. They don't do it by realizing that it's an illusion. What they do instead is they react against the fear and they avoid it through denial or manipulation, or usually a combination of both. And then they treat that as success because, if the fear is out of your mind, it seems like you've solved it. If the fear is denied, it seems like you've solved it. Or if the fear is something that you manipulate your way out of, it seems like you've solved it. So, for example, you might fear paying your rent. But then in the last minute, you earn some money somehow, and you've paid your rent, and like, phew, okay, I've done it. The fear is gone. But what you've done there is you haven't actually conquered or transcended that fear. What you've done is you've manipulated your way out of it. And yes, it worked. But then what this means is that the next time it comes up, you'll be in the exact same place. You haven't actually grown yourself to be a bigger person to not fear that situation anymore. That would be real growth. Real growth in that situation would be like you faced it so deeply that when it happens to you again, you won't react the same way that you usually do. But if all you did is just pay it off with some money, that didn't actually grow you. And so it seems like you've solved your fear, but actually you haven't. Because you haven't seen that it's an illusion. Now, of course, you might wonder, well, Leo, but how is not paying my rent an illusion? They're going to kick me out of my house. That's true. They will kick you out of your house eventually. But the illusion is that this is a terrible thing. And you might say, well, but it is a terrible thing. Well, again, the illusion is that you think it's an objectively terrible thing, whereas really it's something your mind is constructing to be a terrible thing. See? That's something you have to work through on your own. The thing you have to understand about fear is that when you're stuck on a fear, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand how the fear is an illusion. Precisely because if you could easily see how it's an illusion, you wouldn't be afraid of it. So if you're really afraid of something, you're going to be deeply in denial that it's an illusion. You're going to feel like it's real. And you're not going to understand how it's unreal. That's going to take some work. It might take you years of work to finally crack that nut and to see like, oh yeah, I see now how it was an illusion. So don't let that throw you off. You're not necessarily going to understand how all of it is an illusion right now. So if you really want a permanent fix for fear, and you really want to use fear to grow yourself, and you want to play up this whole idea that life is a love simulator, then what you got to do is you got to do the counterintuitive move here and to confront your fear. Avoidance of fear brings stagnation and a victim mentality. That's one of the worst things about running away from your fears, is that the more you do it, the more you feel stuck, depressed, and the more it hurts your self-esteem. Because everything terrifies you now. You can get to the point where you're so terrified you don't even want to leave your house. There actually are people like this who are too scared to leave their house. See? And they become total victims. And the reason it's so tricky is because it's not like you just are that way one day. It's like you gradually build up to it over years and years and years and years of avoiding fear, of denying fear, until you become such a victim that you're completely stuck and hopeless. So be careful about that. There's a condition known as learned helplessness, where this can happen to you. But if you confront your fear, then it grows you. And it also brings instant relief. It's not even necessary that you fully solve the actual physical problem. Like, let's say you owe somebody some money, and you might think, well, if I just give them the money, that's what's going to solve the problem. And that's what will bring relief. Actually, the relief will be brought even sooner if you just surrender yourself to that experience, like we talked about earlier, and you stop resisting it, and you actually confront the fear head on. That will bring immediate relief, to the point that you don't even need to wait to pay the money off. The relief will come to you now, as soon as you confront the problem. Like, for example, if you're stuck in a bad, abusive relationship as a woman, and you have a lot of fear about leaving this relationship because, you like this guy, he's almost perfect, he's so nice, and so he's so good most of the time, but, occasionally when he drinks, he gets abusive with me. But, if not for that, then he would be perfect. You have this kind of fantasy in your mind, common fantasy. And so really, you know that you need to leave this relationship, but you're in denial about it because you're afraid. You don't want to leave. You don't want to be alone and all that. And so by not leaving, you start to get more and more stuck. You see, by building up that fear of leaving this relationship, like, you start to imagine how bad it's going to get, how alone you're going to be, how much you're going to regret leaving him, and blah, 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 and how mad he's going to be, and how sad he's going to be, and all this stuff. And with all those images, you get yourself stuck more and more and more, and your self-esteem drops lower and lower and lower. Whereas if you confront the worst of it, and you bite the bullet, and you say, fuck it, you know what, I'm going to leave. Yes, it's going to be painful for a while. Yes, I'm going to be alone. Yes, he's going to be sad too. And yes, it's going to be bad for a few weeks. But fuck it. Let me just go through this whole experience. I surrender to the experience. Let me just go through it. Immediately, you'll get relief. You don't even need to walk out the door yet. You will get relief before you've even walked out the door. That will build confidence for you, and then that will actually help you to deal with the situation in the best way possible. Avoidance of fear can become extremely pathological, resulting in all sorts of twisted addictions, lying, criminal schemes, dirty politics, abuse, various kinds of parasitic behavior, ideologies, and devilry of all sorts come from avoiding fear. Fear of ultimately facing yourself, facing your own weaknesses. See, that's often what we're afraid of, really. We're afraid of stepping up to the ball. We're afraid of going big. We're afraid of being bold. We're afraid of being decisive. We're afraid of putting ourselves in a situation where we have to work hard, where we have to be creative, where we have to be innovative, where we have to be courageous, where we have to be our best selves. That's what we're really afraid of. And a lot of people, rather than doing that, what they do is they take a shortcut, and instead they resort to addiction, lying, criminal schemes, abuse, parasitic behavior, ideology, and devilry, because they don't really want to face their own greatness. How twisted is that? It's amazing how twisted consciousness can get.